Hello, everybody. My name is Jay Bongo, and I want to talk about Call of Duty Vanguard. More importantly, Call of Duty Vanguard will be sort of the focal point in which I talk about world history at large and why it's important. So, Call of Duty Vanguard. Now, it is it is a game. It is definitely a game. It is basically the way I would define it is if modern warfare decided to wear World War II grease paint. And what I mean by that is they have these nonsensical and sometimes very modern looking attachments like almost modern esque reflex sights and a drum mag on an M1 Garand, which is quite frankly impossible. And one of the big things is the STG 44, the Sturmgewehr 44, which if you remove the stock, which you can remove the stock of the STG 44 in Vanguard. And for those not in the know, if you do that, you have a very expensive club because you can't fire it. Because a lot of the bells and whistles for the firing mechanisms in the STG 44 are in the stock, so you can't remove it. Um, I didn't really come on this just to complain and bitch about the historical inaccuracies in terms of the actual firearms and stuff like that. It's really just kind of a bigger point I want to make in which people don't seem to really understand how to make historically accurate games anymore, or just stick to historically accurate events that happened. Like if you're making a video game and your time frame for history, let's do something weird, is Mughal Empire India, then you're sticking to that setting. You're very rarely deviating that for creative reasons. The only reason why you would deviate is to make the game more fun to play. But there is a limit to that. If you're basing a game in a historical setting, it still needs to be somewhat historically accurate. Just full stop. It wouldn't make sense to have a Mughal Empire setting game and all of a sudden having the main character having a death machine from Modern Warfare, for instance. Screw you, Mughal Empire! It wouldn't make any sense. You wouldn't do that. But the and this is a very extreme sort of hypothetical scenario for what I'm already seeing happen with Vanguard. I saw this image from Curse Vanguard Guns, by the way. Amazing meme template. Keep it going. Please. I love that shit. Um, what I'm seeing from that is this M1911 with with a silencer, which or suppressor, which makes sense. It makes sense to have that extended mag. Okay, still not that crazy, but and this modern ass reflex sight and laser sight. I'm like, what? What? And if it's not a laser sight, I'm sorry. I didn't look too far. I didn't look at it too long because I didn't want my eyeballs to fucking vomit. It already looked like a monstrosity. I looked like I was seeing. It looked like I was seeing some sort of abyssal horror creation, far from the realms and depths of H.P. Lovecraft's rotting brain, and it's just terrible. It's terrible. And the bigger point I want to make at large is that history fucking matters. All right, history matters just as much as mathematics, if not a little bit more. Because what history is it details our accomplishments and our failures. It is the beautiful, good, bad, and ugly all wrapped up into one caustic little paper waste receptacle that we have to learn through. And if it doesn't make you comfortable, all the better, because the bad things you won't repeat. Or at least that is the mindset. Those that do not learn from history, which is people at large, are doomed to sort of repeat it. That's why society feels like it's going through a loop. It feels like it's going through a sort of loop Now, why do I say it's a loop? Well, during the early 20th century, we had something called the influenza crisis. Right? It is this widespread influenza. And it kind of mirrored a lot of the stuff that happened back then. Was stuff that we're kind of mirroring now. People in a widespread panic, masks, medicines being put out, people not trusting the medicine. And I'm not making any argument for one side or the other, but I'm just saying that the same things are happening. So if you don't learn from history, you definitely are doomed to fucking repeat it. I don't know how many times this needs to be said before people actually start to wake up and learn from it. And also, history isn't this bits and pieces thing that you can take one part of and completely discard the other. You can't do that with history. You need to take it all for what it is. Because that's what history, it is what happened. It's not about if you liked what happened. It's not about how you feel about what happened. Save that for worksheets and packets and dittos. In regards to your own personal opinion, history doesn't really care. Because it's the past. The past is dead. And dead bodies don't give a shit. The dead don't care, and neither does the past. So, when you take certain liberties with history, when you start creating this own alternative history scenario, which doesn't make much sense, like having something as minor as having multiple attachments, bells and whistles on an STG-44, by the way, not having a stock on it, which somehow fires due to the power of Odin, I guess, and something minor like that, and then forgetting about whole incidents that are vital to a country or the world's history, like the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the rape of Nanking, and all sorts of stuff. It's stuff. Then this video is not going to be censored for stuff like that. History is important. You need to learn from history. If you don't, you're doomed to repeat it. So stuff like the rape of Nanking, stuff like the Holocaust, Japanese the experimentation of Japanese scientists during World War II experimenting on their own people as well as prisoners of war. All of this stuff is important. All of this stuff is going to ruffle feathers. Segregation, racism, McCarthyism, Salem witch trials. I could keep going. These are all important events. Even the most minor aspects of history are important, because even if they don't appeal to your interests or they don't appeal to your sensibilities, that doesn't detract from their value at all. For instance, I am not in any capacity interested about the history of glassblowing. I could care less, really. And I don't care if that's a misnomer. Not a misnomer. Whatever. I don't care about that. But somebody who is maybe a student who wants to learn about glassblowing, doing it as a hobby, might be interested about glassblowing and the history behind it. That becomes important to them, while it is not very important for me. That's the thing. You can look at bits of history and see what is important to you and what you just generally need to know to be in the know about what happened back then, but you can still largely move on with your life. And that's the thing. I think people nowadays just want to forget that history happened, that all the bad shit happened, because we're in the now, like everything's better. When it's really not. It's really not better. It's kind of bad, actually. And part of why things are bad now is because of what happened back then in the earlier 20th century. Early 20th century, mid, and just in the late 20th century as well. Why do certain countries not get along, for instance? You can look in the 20th century and find out. Because there's something about the beginning of the modern era that was the most important, one of the most important aspects of human history, and that seem to affect us very, very, very much. You know, a lot of the stuff that happened back then is a lot of the reasons why shit is the way it is now. Like, why certain countries don't get along, why certain people trade, like, countries trade with some countries and largely just kind of pretend the others don't exist. Um, why Israel is even a thing again? Because, by the way, there was a time when Israel wasn't a thing. So it, I can't state it enough how important this shit is. It's very important. And if I sound like a broken record, fine. People need to keep hearing this shit over and over and over and over and over again, so that maybe we can make something better if we learn from it and do something with that knowledge. Because you can't just make a mistake and forget it happened. You can't just make a mistake and be like, oh, that's fine. I can't, like I don't need to deal with it anymore. You might not need to personally deal with a mistake, but what you do from those is learn from it. You learn from a mistake, and then you try something else, and then learn from your past failures. That's learning. It's what history really is to some degree. It's the process of human learning through the course of history, the course of human history. And it feels like, in an attempt to make everything more modern, we're kind of losing our history in a way. And that's awful. And even something as minor as Call of Duty Vanguard screwing up a few attachments, maybe, it's kind of major in the long run to some degree. I'm not trying to say that I absolutely care about it. I just largely chose to ignore Vanguard, except for memes, maybe. But it's bad. It's just bad. Because it's sort of like people are trying to present this, like I said, an alternative history, or trying to alter events that actually happened so that they're skewed one way or another. And people might argue, well, history is largely biased, and it is. History is biased. History is written by the victor. It's a perfect example of that. But that's also some instances in history we just do not have enough sources on for both to get a view from both sides. So there's some, for example, the histories of people that largely couldn't, for whatever reason, record a lot of their events. Like, maybe they're more of an oral tradition, or a lot of the stuff that they did record got destroyed. That history is kind of lost because they got destroyed. That's why the person that usually writes that part, wow, that was dumb. The person that usually ends up getting talked about is the other side, because they probably don't want to have anything else to do with that. The people that, for all they care, don't exist anymore. But even if it's not just conflict, there's just a lot of weirdness in history we just don't know. Like, it's still kind of debated, for instance, and this is another minor point, why there was a lot of illustrations on manuscripts from monks, or little books from monks. And during medieval history, there was a lot of illustrations on it. A lot of those could be construed as political pieces, and a lot of them are. But sometimes the general consensus could just be like, these monks are bored, so they just drew a lot of stuff. Sometimes there's simple answers. But the main point is, history is important. And even minor shit like this ruffles my feathers, and it did ruffle a lot of other people's feathers too. So and this isn't just me going, don't buy Call of Duty Vanguard. If you want to throw more money at the people who have bastardized a very simple formula just to try to make more money than they're already making, then go ahead. Alright? If you want to do that, knock yourself out. Do that. But don't come crying to other people when it's, the same stuff over and over and over again. In a weird way, I kind of miss when Call of Duty started doing futuristic stuff. I wasn't behind it at all when it was happening. But now that I'm kind of looking back, I'm just like, maybe if we give them the freedom. Should we give them maybe the freedom to mess up their own futuristic wacko firearms? Because I like it when sci-fi shit happens. That's cool. That's cool stuff. So if it's in a sci-fi setting, it's fine. But, if you're adding modern attachments to historic weapons, no. Stop. And the large point of this video, the point is just that history matters. That's it. It's a simple point, and it's one that seems to go over a lot of people's heads, and it's just people just don't seem to care about it in general, but it is. It's important. So, never stop learning. Stay safe. And I thank you for watching this video. This is not going to be the what the fuck is that, because this is just a rant. That's all this is. This is probably going to be a 17-minute rant about that. And if you're not about that kind of stuff, I'm sorry, but there's some stuff I need to get off my chest. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, night, cycle, whatever. And history matters. Don't let anyone tell you different. Love you all. Bye.